The Bible prophesies of a time coming very soon when every person will be required by the Antichrist and his world governing system to have an ID number. Without it, no one's going to be able to buy or sell or participate in the economy. This system is being established now, and I'll show you how on this edition of the Endtime Show. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dave Robbins with Endtime Ministries, and I do thank you for joining me on this edition of the Endtime Show. The world has become interconnected at a level that we've never before imagined possible. States, banking, communications, transport, tech, and international development organizations have all embraced digital identification. The current conversation hinges on the need to speed up registrations to ensure that every person on the planet has their own digital ID. This is the direction we're moving. Very quickly now. As a matter of fact, the World Bank considers 7 of the 8 billion people on the earth already numbered. We have not stumbled into this new age of digital data management unwittingly. International organizations such as the World Bank and the United Nations have actively encouraged states to provide citizens with proof of their legal existence in an effort to combat structural poverty, statelessness, and social exclusion. So it's very important that we understand that all of these things are pointing us towards the eventual system that the Bible calls the mark of the beast. Oh, I should say that people that study these things refer to it as the mark of the beast, but it's the Bible prophesies that there's a time coming when every person is going to be required by the Antichrist, again in his world governing system, to have their own unique identification number. And without that, no one is going to be able to buy or sell or participate in the economy, be a productive member of society. In order to get your number, everyone's going to be forced to worship or pledge allegiance to the Antichrist and his world governing system. But according to the Bible, anyone who pledges allegiance to the Antichrist will be eternally damned. That's Revelation chapter 14. So imagine the power of an individual who could control the buying and selling and the very ability for a person to be able to participate in the society in any way, especially on a global level. You see, it's not where the these different technologies and numbering systems, iris scans, facial recognition photographs, microchips, social credit scores, artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, the Internet of Everything. All of this is very, very real, folks. We're already there. And all of these moves towards a cashless society, it's not where they begin. Perhaps they began with, somebody trying to solve a very important need. But the problem is it's what they lead to, a system of control. And when these efforts were launched, none of them were the mark of the beast. However, Bible prophecy foretells everything these systems help to create, this vast global numbering system that people will have to be part of, will eventually be used by the Antichrist to coerce people to pledge allegiance to him. I've said this for years, that the Antichrist is only going to have 3.5 years to rule over the world. So he's not going to come on the scene and say, how can I control these people? How can I get them to bow down to my edicts and to worship me? That's going to be the goal. In doing that, you'll be worshiping Satan. The Bible says they worship the Antichrist in Revelation 13, and they worship the dragon or Satan himself. Well, It's very, again, that's of eternal consequence. You absolutely cannot do that, but that's going to be his goal. So he's not going to come on the scene and say, man, how can I do that? Well, I probably ought to establish a world government, and then I need a way to sanction everybody. So let's create a digital ID system to where I can number everybody. The Antichrist isn't going to have time to do all that. He is going to usurp authority over an already fully functioning system, and that is exactly what we're seeing being established as we speak, folks. The global numbering systems, all of these digital IDs and facial recognition photographs and all these ways to number everybody, all of this plays into this. You know, all of these efforts, they're in one way or another aiding in the establishment of that one final global numbering system. And until the invention of, this is a 2,000-year-old prophecy, but until the invention of the computer and the internet and now blockchain technology and all of these things, none of this was even possible. But during my generation and the generation we're living in now, it has been made possible. But yet some people say, well, you know, Dave, we're not really in the end time. I haven't bought into that. What planet are you living on? What Bible are you reading? We're way off into the end time. We're just prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ. I don't care if it's 20 years from now. It's still, we're right on the cusp of it. And in my opinion, it's probably much sooner than that. So regardless of the technology, the world government must number every person. And believe me, they're all of the global governing efforts, organizations they're pushing for this right now. And this numbering system will most certainly be digital. And therefore, it is imperative that the global population transition from physical cash to a digital currency, and everybody must transition into a digital society. Can you feel the push for that right now? Getting everybody to go digital. I hardly ever, almost never use cash anymore. Maybe if I were to stop by a garage sale, or maybe put some money in somebody's birthday card or but I'm saying normally 99% of my purchases, I'm on the go. I'm traveling. I'm going through airports. I'm out and about, taking somebody out to dinner, whatever. I mean, everything, my life, I'm going 100,000 miles an hour, it seems like. I don't use cash anymore. And most of my friends, most of my family, most of my sphere of influence, when I go out and I'm traveling with people, I very seldom do you see cash anymore. Everybody's moving totally digital. That's all by grand design. America, the world, has been forced down this huge funnel onto this digital pipeline. And everybody, you know, there are still some great holdouts that try to use cash for everything. But by and large, most people, the cashless transactions are way up. The percentage of those in America and especially overseas. And so, you know, it's super convenient, right? You just have a card in your billfold, whip it out, and I can buy things in Israel and in Europe and wherever. I can use my credit union's debit card over there. And so everything's interconnected, everything's digital. It's all by grand design. So we're going to get off into this today because I want to show you some video clips and go over some different things that I'm going to be talking about. First, let me mention First Cup Coffee. You know, as you can imagine, with all this I'm talking about, we work around the clock to keep up with everything around here, all the news, everything that's going on. And yes, we are energized and motivated by our God-given purpose, but thankfully we've got First Cup Coffee upstairs that we can drink every morning. It's awesome. And these guys they're a Christian-owned Patriot Coffee Company. They're out of Texas. They've got many different roasts for you to choose from. That's very important to many coffee drinkers. So go to firstcup.com, use code Endtime to get 10% off. If you subscribe, they'll give you an additional 10% off. So go to firstcup.com, use code Endtime to get 10% off today. Okay. Now, I want to go to an article, or actually I'm going to hit several things that I saw on a website called The Sociable. You should check it out. It's very up-to-date information on global IDs and numbering systems and everything the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund and the World Economic Forum and all of them are trying to do. If you want to keep up to date, visit The Sociable. It's one of them that I go to. So they published an article. The World Bank president calls on governments to launch digital IDs and to connect with the private sector. Why am I talking about this today? Because I'm showing you that these are unelected globalists running the world, and they are driving as hard as they can for the entire world to go digital and everybody to have their own unique digital identity so that they can function in the world. But they're going to use this to economically sanction people, and they're already doing that. So let me show you how as we go down through here. So the president of the World Bank, you've got the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and all of these are designed to run the economy of the world, okay? So the president of the World Bank, he's called on governments to launch these digital identity schemes so that they can be linked with the private sector and existing infrastructures that are already built. So he was speaking at the World Bank Group's inaugural Global Digital Summit last week. And World Bank President, his name is Ajay Banga. And he said that digital identity should be embraced worldwide and that governments should be the owners of those digital ID databanks so that they can guarantee privacy and security for their citizen. Boy, I just want my government in charge of that, right? Well, according to Banga, once everyone is hooked up to the digital ID, then it can be linked to existing infrastructure and that's run by private companies. Well, what that's going to do is once you get your digital ID and it's linked to private companies and different things, then they're going to store all of your data, and once everything goes digital, they can tell every single thing you do, where you buy your gas, your groceries, a magazine that you bought last week, any kind of a loan that you took out, any kind of money that you put in your bank account, so they can track your taxes a lot more. A lot of people want to make some money on the side to maybe avoid some taxes. I'm just saying, I know there's people that have done that. But yet, when everything goes digital, that's going to be impossible. The government wants to track every single thing you do. So, going completely digital will allow them to do that. The World Bank president emphasized the importance of governments owning citizens' digital identities, and he argued that it's fundamental for societal functioning. Now remember, the mark of the beast, Revelation 13, 16 through 18, that everybody's going to be given their own unique identification number, and without that, the Bible calls it a mark in the right hand or in the forehead, but it's going to be a unique digital identification number. They're going to need that to buy or sell, to function in society. The World Bank leader, president, last week just said that it's fundamental. These digital IDs are fundamental for people to be able to function in society, folks. This is a 2,000-year-old prophecy. I would highly doubt that this individual has read the prophecies of the Bible and said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to design a system so that we can fulfill this prophecy. That's not what they're doing. These people are designing a system to control you and me. Again, the people that run these things are unelected globalists. They believe in a world governing body. That's what they're doing here. So the president of the World Bank, he asserted in this meeting that digital IDs, along with currency and safety, are essential components of the social contract between citizens and their governments, highlighting the need to safeguard these rights from private ownership. And I got a clip here that I want you to see of the actual interview. It's just a real short clip.
Providing infrastructure is a core element, but on top of that, creating a digital identity platform for citizenry is kind of foundational, because, and I believe your government should be the owner of your digital ID.
Yes, absolutely, 100%.
Private companies should not own that. It is the social contract of a citizen with their country to have an identity, a currency, and safety. You should not take that away from them. They should have the digital identity. That digital identity should guarantee the privacy of that citizen. It should help them with their security, but the government should give the identity. Once you do that, then connecting them to the infrastructure that a private company, whether Ericsson or Verizon or combinations of them, in fact, most states a combination can build, then the question is, what do you do with it? That requires that digital ID so you can start connecting with that citizen. Now, the question is, when you connect with that citizen, you must ensure that governments guarantee the privacy of that citizen. Because if you don't do that, you will run into trouble with the acceptance of the idea. So if you want this to be embraced around the world, yes, get the infrastructure, get a digital ID. That's what we used to talk about even earlier. Get that going and then move from there.
And based on that, you can be financially included. You can get
insurance,
you can back insurance. You can start a business. Everything is built on
SME credit. Everything flows from there.
So the guy said that they should have a digital identity, and that digital identity should guarantee the privacy of the citizen. Yeah, right, because the government is going to own this. He said it should help them the privacy of the citizens, their security, but the government should give the identity. The government's going to own all of this. And then he said, once you do that, then you connect them to the infrastructure that different companies, he said, in fact, mostly it's a combination. Then the question is, what do you do with that if it requires a digital ID? So you can start connecting that with the citizens. So he's saying that as a foundation to all the countries around the world, every citizen has to have a digital ID. The government should give them that ID, own it, and then we'll connect them to the businesses. They can use that digital identity to function in society. But imagine if you didn't have that digital identity, or if the government had the ability to shut that off. Could they economic sanction you? Man, you better believe they could. I'm going to show you that in a minute, what all the infrastructure that they want to connect you to. Because, folks, the system of the mark of the beast is being established right now. The Antichrist will eventually usurp authority over this and economically sanction people. So, for the president of the World Bank, his name's Banga, and other unelected globalists, this digital identity is the key to unlocking access to goods and services through public-private partnerships. He said it's the fusion of the corporation and the state. Once governments launch their digital identity schemes, the World Bank president says that they should be connected to private companies and existing infrastructures. So if you want this to be embraced around the world, he said, yes, get the infrastructure, get a digital ID, get that going, and then move from there, he added, well, I want to show you a diagram here. It's very important because this is what they want you to be connected with. And if you look there in the middle, let's say you're the person that has the digital identity. Here's what they want the digital identity to be connected to. In other words, in the future, they want you to have this government-issued digital ID to have access to health care, access to any financial services. You want to go buy a house, you want a loan. They want to connect you through your digital ID, any kind of food and sustainability, travel and mobility, humanitarian resources, e-commerce, anything you would buy online, you got to have a digital ID, social platforms, Facebook, YouTube, all that stuff, got to have a digital ID, e-government, telecommunications, and anything you're going to do on a phone, anything like that, you got to have this digital ID. So you can see that they're laying the groundwork for all of this to connect you and your digital ID to be able to function in society, healthcare, insurance, I mean everything. Once this digital ID is established and connected to public-private infrastructure, everything else can be built on top of that, including financial services, insurance, healthcare, education, and the process of starting a new business. I mean, everything that you would do in society, the digital ID would be required for every single thing, all the infrastructure that's already built. This is what the president of the World Bank is saying here. He's saying the digital ID, that's simply the foundation. Then we connect you into all this infrastructure, but the government is going to issue you this ID. Now, in America, we're getting pretty close to that. Try to function in society without your Social Security number. The World Bank already, I've seen the map. The World Bank already, and I tell you what you could do if you're out there. I've saw the map once, and then I couldn't find it again. But it showed everywhere that the World Bank already considers numbered. And if you find that, send that to drobbins@endtime.com. There's just some homework to find that map again, because the United States was already blacked in. We were already considered numbered. Most nations around the earth are already considered. And now they say there's less than 1 billion people of the 8 billion population that are not numbered. And boy, they're trying to hammer that home in all of these poorer nations in the world and homeless people, even here in the United States. So, wow. I mean, is this thing coming down or not? The system is being set up so the Antichrist can dole out the mark of the beast in just the very near future during the Great Tribulation. Okay. Got a lot more to go here. Let me mention Birch Gold real quick. You know, these world government enthusiasts, these unelected globalists, they want to impose these digital currencies and digital IDs on their respective populations. And that could even allow officials to prohibit you from purchasing certain products or freeze or seize your bank accounts. In essence, it's going to enable the government and these central banks to more control over your finances. Concerned Americans are diversifying their assets into physical gold with the help of Birch Gold Group. If you want maybe a physical asset held in a tax-sheltered retirement account, go to birchgold.com/endtime to get a free info kit on gold, how all this stuff works. Maybe you've got an IRA or a 401k, maybe from a previous employer that it's just gathering dust, right? You don't know what to do with it. Well, Birch Gold can help you convert that IRA into gold and without a penny out of pocket. So go to birchgold.com/endtime. Claim your free info kit on gold, because if digital currency becomes a reality, you may wish you had some gold to fall back on. Okay, now, the World Bank president's words are, of course, echo those of India's digital ID architect. His name is Nandan Nilekani. And he said at last year's International Monetary Fund, the spring meetings, that if you think, what are the tools of the new world, he said, everybody should have a digital ID. Everybody should have a bank account. Everybody should have a smartphone. Then anything can be done. Everything else is built on that. I want you to hear the clip in his own words.
If you think what are the tools of the new world, everybody should have a digital ID, everybody should have a bank account, everybody should have a smartphone.
Okay.
Then anything can be done. Everything else is built on that.
Because we were talking about this before we came onto the panel, the 3 basic things: a smartphone, a bank account, and a digital ID.
Yes.
That's where every nation...
In India, it's been named by the Prime Minister the JAM Trinity. Jandan, which is the bank account, Aadhaar, the ID, and mobile.
It shouldn't cost that much.
Nothing. Peanuts.
So all of these unelected globalists, and that's what the reason I say unelected is because it means you're not in control. I'm not in control. These are globalists. They believe in a world governing body. And Nilekani here, and the lady that's interviewing him, I didn't get her name, but this guy is a staunch advocate. He's with the he's with the World Economic Forum in different places. He says he's a staunch advocate of digital public infrastructure. And I'm sorry, he's with the International Monetary Fund. He is a staunch advocate of digital public infrastructure. I want you to remember this. This is something we need to watch. It's DPI, Digital Public Infrastructure. And it consists of 3 components. Remember the video. Digital identity. That's the foundation for all of this, folks. That's why they're pushing. They're driving us into a digital world. Everything's digital. Everything physical, it's not trackable, and it's galling them. They can't stand that. They want to be able to track and control everybody. Same thing the Antichrist is going to do with the mark of the beast. So, digital identity, that's the basis. Everybody on earth needs to be given their own unique digital identification number. And then digital payment systems. We got to get everybody in, we got to get control of people's bank accounts. And then mass data sharing, which would be cell phones and on your computer. That's why they want the government established the computer years ago, because it's a data gathering. And everybody get on the internet for free, because people will put things on the internet that they would never share with you openly, but they'll post it on Facebook or write it on their digital diaries and just all kinds of stuff. Everybody can see. There are people that collect the data of every single thing that you do on the internet, everybody. Nothing is private. And yet people put stuff on there. I'm shocked. Actually, it's getting to the point where I almost can't be shocked anymore, because I think, man, I've seen it all. But just when I think that, something else happens. And there's a deal now, the guys were telling me just before we come on the air, there are people that think they're animals. And they wanted to be treated by animals, and one person thought they were some kind of they're birds now. And their parents were going to take them to a veterinarian, believe it or not, to be treated for something, and the veterinarian said, no, I'm not doing that, because he's into treating physical animals. I mean, just when you think you can't get shocked anymore, I hear something else. Well, let me get back on digital IDs, because that's a whole other program we could talk about. But last year, the G20 India leaders, at the declaration, they said this: we endorse the voluntary and non-binding G20 policy recommendations for advancing financial inclusion and productivity gains through digital public infrastructure. Remember, DPI, remember that. And he said, we take note of the significant role of digital public infrastructure in helping to advance financial inclusion in support of inclusive growth and sustainable development. Well, I'm going to talk to you in a minute about some different people that are involved in this DPI and show you how this is part of the future Mark of the Beast system that's being established as we speak. Remember, DPI.
A voice spoke to me and said, I've got something I want to show you. I was so sure God had talked to me. And I was stunned by what I saw.
A direct fulfillment of this over 2,500-year-old prophecy. The United States will stand with Israel.
Why haven't I ever seen this before?
1/3 of humanity will die. What do these beasts symbolize?
The lion, the bear, the leopard.
The combined beast from Revelation 13 represents the end-time government of the Antichrist. Understanding the end time.
Now streaming on Endtime Plus and available to order at endtime.com/UET. Go to endtime.com/UET or call 800-ENDTIME.
What if you could understand Bible prophecy? Dave Robbins, the host of the Endtime Show's TV and radio programs, is holding a free prophecy conference near you. Gain peace and understanding about what the Bible says concerning end-time prophecy. Call 1-800-ENDTIME or go to endtime.com/events to see when Dave will be in a location near you.
One of the key points I want to make here today is this, the digital ID being the foundation for all of this. I mean, imagine walking into let's say you got an emergency. You cut yourself on a lawnmower blade or whatever. There's a million different things. Imagine walking into an emergency room and they say, do you have your digital ID? You say, look, I'm not worried about that. I'll pay for it all with cash. And they say, no. You got to have your digital ID. If you're going to have access to health care, any kind of health care, we need your digital ID. You say, well, I don't have one. I'm homeless right now. I just cut myself on helping a guy cut his lawn and I need health care. And they say, no, sorry, no digital ID, no health care. Folks, there are already nations doing this, you understand. Prior to this G20 summit that I mentioned earlier, the B20 India Communique recommended that members roll out digital public infrastructure, this DPI, to boost financial inclusion and access to health care. And then, listen at this, you knew these guys were going to be involved, right? In November of 2023, the United Nations, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and their partners of the Rockefeller Foundation, they launched what's called the 50 in 50 campaign to help 50 countries design, launch, and scale components of their digital public infrastructure within the next 5 years. Well, ahead of last month's vote on an update to the European Union digital identity framework, a small number of members of parliament, they're called MEPs, they spoke out against the adoption of a European Union-wide digital identity wallet, and they calling it an insult to the democracy that was creating a QR code society and leading to a Chinese-style system of social credit. There are people in Europe that are balking this DPI system and this digital wallet system. They don't want to go to a completely digital platform. But Europe's going to go there. Europe's going to be the power base of the Antichrist. China's there. I mean, all these other nations around the world, especially the ones pushing for a central bank digital currency, they're all pushing for this. And so I'm wondering, this is something for us to watch, how will it be implemented here in the United States? Will we go fully digital and then implement a central bank digital currency? I saw where the head, I think his name's Powell, over the central bank digital currency, he was saying, oh, we're nowhere near doing that. The fact of the matter is that as long as we have a central bank, they're going to be pushing for a central bank digital currency from now on. Watch. And Donald Trump said, well, if I become president, we're never going to have a central bank digital currency. There may come a time when we need to get rid of the Federal Reserve altogether. I would be for that immediately. Give the power to control our economy back to Congress, a group of elected officials. Let's have true elections from now on that we can trust, and remove the Federal Reserve, get rid of them, and give the power back to the Congress, which the power is granted to them by our Constitution. And the Federal Reserve Act took that away from Congress and gave it to the Federal Reserve years ago. That would be the best case scenario. And then, of course, all of them be born again. That would be the absolute 100% best case scenario. But something else that we should be watching, and I want to make sure that you remember this, DPI, this digital public infrastructure. It's a mechanism for surveillance and control, and it combines digital IDs, central bank digital currencies, get this, vaccine passports, carbon footprint tracking data, paving the way for these 15-minute smart cities, future lockdowns, and systems of social credit. Folks, all of this is easily controllable once everything goes digital. Remember, the president of the World Bank said, hey, the digital ID, that's the foundation. Everything else stems out from there. The ability to telecommunications, healthcare, banking, travel, everything, once you're allowed, once you get your digital ID. This is what these unelected globalists are talking about in their meetings. And you know, this DPI, it's sold as a mechanism for financial inclusion. So, hey, you want to be included in society at all. You want to be able to get a bank account. You want to be able to get a loan for a car, a loan for a house, or maybe a loan to start a small business, or for any kind of convenience, health care, any kind of green progress, anything to do with anything that, the climate change agenda that's being pushed. Got to have this DPI, this digital ID. And DPI is an all-inclusive phrase applied to this looming technocratic governance over people and these 15-minute smart cities in which they'll live. I mean, it's just, all this stuff is very real, folks. And these shared digital systems include the desire to adopt central bank digital currencies. They need a digital currency for you to have a way to function, right? So they'd love to move us off of cash and move us onto a central bank digital currency on a global scale. Most of the central banks around the world are pushing to get people to implement central bank digital currencies in their nation, as well as establishing a World Health Organization managed framework to build a comprehensive digital health ecosystem. And that's going to include vaccine passports, which were already championed by last year's G20 Bali leaders declaration. So, but imagine the key thing, this DPI, this digital infrastructure, that's the basis to all this. That's the foundation. It all starts with a digital ID. In fact, the EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, she told that G20 meeting that vaccine passports or the digital health certificates, doesn't sound as bad, does it? That was one example of DPI in action. This digital public infrastructure. In other words, getting people their own digital ID that's issued to them by the government owns it. You heard the president of the World Bank. And then once they get that, then they'll tie that into their health care, travel, education, everything that you would do to function in society comes from your digital ID. Man, that sounds prophetic, doesn't it? Revelation chapter 13, verse 16 through 18. Everybody's going to be given a mark or a number in their right hand and their forehead, without which they're not going to be able to buy or sell. You're not going to be able to participate in economy, in other words. Wow. Are we seeing that happening right now, folks? I mean, I honestly have had people lately tell me, I don't know if we're in the end time or not. I'm like, what in the world? I had a guy yesterday come over to my house. Maybe he's listening today. I don't know, because I told him all about end time. He came over to my house to look at the foundation of my home, and he told me that they didn't believe in a literal hell. He said they don't believe that the second coming happens until after the 1,000-year millennial reign. I mean, we went down this big old long list of stuff of what he believed prophetically. He didn't even believe we're in the end time. He thought we got another 1,000 years yet. And I said, man, let me tell you about the second coming of Jesus Christ that's going to happen in just a very near future. And you need to make sure you're ready to meet him. He said, man, I don't know about that. So I went down a bunch of scriptures. I talked to him about Daniel 7 and how the Bible says the United States, Great Britain, Germany, Russia, the European Union, they're all going to be on the earth and in power at the time of the second coming. Went down the world government and all these different things. And he just looked at me like, I've never heard anything like this. Before we were done, the guy got up. I told him I was a minister. He got up and hugged me at my kitchen table. He's supposed to be looking at the foundation of my house. He got up and hugged me and said, man, thank you so much and God bless you. He said, I've never got a hold of a minister that was able to lay these things out like this. I said, I work right up here at Endtime Ministries. I told him everything we did. Folks, most people don't even have a clue about this stuff. They are clueless by grand design. Nobody's ever been taught this stuff. So we got a big job ahead of us, don't we? Something we need to do. I've got a friends, family, and sphere of influence, everybody that I can get my hands on. I'm going to tell them about this stuff because we're racing. We don't have much time left. Jesus Christ is just around the corner, folks, his second coming. I'm telling you, a 2,000-year-old prophecy that everybody will be given their own unique identification number, and without that, they're not going to be able to function in society. And we've got the people from the International Monetary Fund, people with the World Economic Forum, people with the World Bank. They're all saying, hey, we need to establish globally the very foundation of everything, a digital ID system. And then from that, we will allow people, if they have their digital ID, access us the government, the globalist, we will allow them access to health care. You say, well, what do you mean allow? Because right now there are nations that if you don't have your national ID card, you have no access to a job. In Uganda right now, if you don't have a national ID number, no access to a job, no access to travel, no education, no health care in Uganda in 2024. It's actually been that way for a few years. I wrote articles on it years ago. So there are already people being economically sanctioned. Many people, that's just one. Uganda is one of them, folks. People around the world, if you don't have your national ID, you don't have access to all this stuff. Without a Social Security number in America, you're not supposed to be able to have a job because you cannot do your taxes. When we hire somebody here at Endtime, the absolute first thing I have to do is get their Social Security number because we can't issue them a paycheck. You can't do your taxes without your Social Security number. Now, obviously there's people that work for cash and blah, 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 but I'm just telling you, the majority of people in America work for a paycheck that they have to do taxes. And so you can't do that without a Social Security number. This is most of the people on the planet. And so it's a 2,000-year-old prophecy, and the Bible says this is going to be in place just prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ. But some people still don't believe we're in the end time. It blows my mind. Folks, I'm telling you, let me just be real super clear here. The second coming of Jesus Christ is just ahead of us now. I know we've heard it for years. Irrelevant. The Bible says that there will be mockers in the end time that say, oh yeah, second coming of Jesus Christ. I've heard that since the beginning of time. The Bible says there will be people like that. But there will be others that are watching and they know the times and they're discerning and they understand the prophecies and they know what's coming and they're preparing themselves and their friends, family, and their sphere of influence for the soon return of Jesus Christ to this earth, folks. I mean, we do programs all the time. Me and Doug and Vince on world government, world religion, precursors of the mark of the beast, World War III, Israeli-Palestinian peace agreements, the red heifers, you name it. Efforts to rebuild the third temple in the near future. All of these things, all of the major news stories on the planet are prophetic in one way or another. You can tie them into the major ones that we're supposed to be watching happening right now just prior to the second coming. Folks, the second coming of Jesus Christ is just around the corner. And the gospel of the kingdom of God is the God of heaven is coming back before long to establish his kingdom here on the earth. Let me show you how to be a part of that kingdom. Folks, we're racing the rapture. And I've got to make sure I'm ready and everybody else under my sphere of influence is ready as well. Not going to be long.
They that understand what is taking place will instruct many.
Except a man is born again, he can't enter or see the kingdom of God.
I don't care what label you've been given or what label you've given yourself. You are essential. You still matter.
This is a journey, and when we get to the other side of that, that's where our prize is. That's where our reward is.
End time is not going anywhere.
You know, everyone, I want to make one more comment here about this B20 summit, this India summit. It was at that B20 India summit that India's digital identity architect, again, his name is Nandan Nilekani, he said this, and I'm quoting, digital ID and digital public infrastructure, this DPI, should be used for vaccine passports, for tax collection, for toll payments, for climate adaptation, and a circular economy. Basically, every single thing that you need to function in our society, we should have a digital, everybody should have a digital identity for. This is where they're pushing. I'm talking about the leaders of the World Bank and the leaders of the India's digital identity architect and people with the International Monetary Fund and the World Economic Forum and the United Nations and all these other people. They are pushing for this digital, for us to go completely digital and to get digital IDs for every person on the planet. A couple years ago, the United Nations has an effort to ID every person on the planet. It's called ID 2020. A couple years ago, the city of Austin, Texas, partnered with ID 2020 to give a digital identification number to every single homeless person. If you go down to Austin, Austin is very liberal, and they have homeless people everywhere. And so they partnered with ID 2020 to give every single homeless person a digital ID. Why did they do that? Because they want to make sure they can control. It's only about control. And hey, if you want to go into one of these shelters, if you want to do this, you want a bank account, anything you want, we want you, you're going to have a digital ID first. Folks, it's happening. And so you say, well, it's not the mark of the beast. It's not the mark of the beast right now, but it's where these things end up. That's the way I started my program. It's not what they start off as, it's what they're used eventually for absolute control and coercion. Because if I, Dave Robbins, let's say I owned you, whoever you are listening, if I owned your digital ID and I said, okay, I gave this to you and I can take it away, and in essence, it's the government allowing you access to health care, education for your children, a bank account, a potential vaccine in the future, whatever, and travel. You see it's just totalitarian. It's control. It's just them tightening the noose on people. The Bank for International Settlements, which again is a group of unelected globalists, they are wanting programmable central bank digital currencies and digital ID to potentially rule, get this, the metaverse, which is this imaginary world that Zuckerberg has put together for people can go in there and buy property and function in this imaginary world that's out there. Well, the Bank for International Settlements has said, well, we'd really like for a central bank digital currency to be the currency of the metaverse. Well, of course they would. There's going to be people, there's already people spending millions and millions of dollars on that stuff. But with central bank digital currency, these unelected globalists can control it all. That's what it's about. It's about control. Okay, with that said, let me mention Ready Pantry really quick. You know, times are getting crazy, aren't they? And as Americans, I'd love to believe that the grocery stores are always going to be there. But we've seen a few years ago that the supply chains could quickly collapse. Food supplies could diminish. Anything can happen. And so, yes, we do pray for the best, and I believe and trust God, but I prepare too. I've got a few buckets of this stuff in my closet because I saw, well, I was here the first night that COVID, they announced, hey, COVID's in America and all this other stuff, and I went to the store, and it looked like Vietnam was set off in there. People were cutting the skids open to get toilet paper and paper towels, and I thought, what in the world happened? Is everybody going to be cleaning the windows for the next 3 weeks? I mean, it was crazy. And so what would happen, let's say if a World War III kicks off, something like that. Imagine what the stores are going to be like then for a while. Well, what if there was a way that you could have an affordable emergency supply of food? Well, there is. ReadyPantry.com/endtime. They offer these 25-year shelf-stable foods. They got breakfast, lunch, dinners, and even desserts. Not to mention the peace of mind you get knowing that you've got some emergency supply of food for anything. Just add water, heat it up, or and you can eat it. You don't have to crash the store with everybody else. Well, Ready Pantry, they're an American-based company with all the products sourced right here in America. You're not going to be disappointed. And there are many long-term food storage companies on the internet. They're selling products that have been sitting in their warehouses for sometimes up to 10 years. But Ready Pantry, they deliver the freshest products that was packaged within the last couple months. And that's what's delivered to your door. And so Ready Pantry, they offer these discounts up to 20% off for 3 to 12 month supplies. Go to readypantry.com/endtime. Use code endtime and save an additional 10% off of your order. Plus, there's free shipping on all orders. And you can also stock your pantry with buy now but pay later options that's available at checkout by going to readypantry.com/endtime. Okay, now, another thing I wanted to mention really quickly on the lines of this digital ID. This is according to LifeSite. It's another news source that I go to. The European Union claims that their digital ID wallet they're wanting to do is going to be voluntary. But India said that their digital ID wallet was voluntary originally, but that was before it became mandatory. And that's kind of the scheme they like to pull here. India's digital identity scheme, which is called Aadhaar, is a prime example of how the goalpost can shift over time. Hey, this is just voluntary. You can get a voluntary digital ID that will allow you access to health care. Well, what if I don't get it? Well, I'm sorry, but you see the trick they play? So the question is, will the European Union follow India's example once it launches its own digital identity wallets? So the European Union Parliament, they say that the digital identity wallet is voluntary. And, of course, that's what India said years ago before it became mandatory for certain services, okay? And that's what I'm talking about, the ability to function in society. It's what Revelation 13:16 through 18 is all about. You're going to be given a mark in your right hand or in your forehead. Now, that could be, does that have to be a chip implanted in you? No. Could that be an invisible tattoo? It could be. Could it be a card that you hold in your hand? Possibly. And retinal scans, that's in your forehead. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a chip. Everybody has talked for years about a chip. It's got to be a chip. It does not have to be a chip. It's a mark of identification on your person, or it could be a card that you hold in your hand, and it could be a retinal scan, a facial recognition photograph, anything like that. It's a mark of identification that separates you from everybody else. And then that's going to be used to economically sanction people or the lack thereof. In other words, hey, you don't want to comply to our edicts? We're going to invalidate your number. You're stuck. You can't participate in society. Remember the chart I showed you earlier, how they wanted to tie in your health care and travel and your ability to hold a job and to get a bank account, anything in society, they have the ability. They talked about food. I mean, everything. Maybe if you went into a grocery store in the future and they said, well, you don't have your digital ID, sorry, we can't sell you any food. You see, it's economic sanctioning. You say, is that going to happen here in the United States? I don't know if it will be, if the mark of the beast will ever become fully implemented here in the United States, because we're going to stand against the world government with Israel all the way through the end time. You say, but there are people here in the United States that would absolutely love to do that. I totally agree with you. But imagine the blowback that they would get, because there's a lot of people in the United States that are educated on the mark of the beast. I mean, there are people in the government right now that are pushing to not allow a central bank digital currency to ever be implemented here in the United States. Ted Cruz is one of them. Ron DeSantis, Donald Trump. There's many of them. There are governors trying to pass laws that their state would never recognize a central bank digital currency as a means of currency in their state. There are a lot of people that realize the totalitarian efforts of some of these things. And so as long as we have our Constitution and protected rights and can elect governors and hopefully a good president and different things, then we've got ways of fending this off. Most nations, they don't have that. It's just they got a dictator, and they say, this is what we're going to do, and that's it. There's no democracy at all. And there's no vote. It's like, we're just doing this. Uganda, that's just one of the many that no national ID, you can't function in society at all. And so it's something very important that we need to watch moving forward. Again, because of Revelation 12:14, the eagle's wings protecting Israel against the dragon in the end time, or the Satan, the Antichrist, and his world governing system, then that's what we're talking about here. I don't know if the mark of the beast will be fully engaged and implemented here in the United States, because I don't believe we're going to be fully engaged in the world governing body. Say, what do you mean fully engaged? Well, the world government right now, the United States, is not fully engaged in that. The administration that is at the helm, the Biden administration, they are fully engaged in it. However, even the Biden administration has used our UN Security Council veto power to protect Israel against the resolutions at the UN Security Council, in the General Assembly of the United Nations and the UN Security Council. These resolutions, we vetoed that, even under the Biden administration. The Biden administration, I don't agree with I agree with almost none of what they stand for. But if they're going to protect Israel, I would agree with that, okay? Now, what their motives are, I don't know about that, because they're also, I just saw where they're getting ready to allow another like $10 billion. They're going to lift some sanctions and allow $10 billion to flow into the coffers of Iran again. So can you really say you're a ally to Israel if you're allowing the entity that is funding the terrorism that's attacking them, if you're allowing $10 billion to flow into their coffers? I don't understand that. But the thing is that there are a lot of people here in the United States that are standing against what the Biden administration is doing. And so it's a fight that we'll have all the way to the end, probably. But I don't think that we will be fully engaged with the world government in the end time. And therefore, I don't believe that the mark of the beast, there will be people here maybe that try to implement it, but I don't think that it will be fully implemented here in the United States as well. That's something we'll have to watch. But I believe I can prove that scripturally. And so, but my main thing today was just to talk to you about the DPI, these digital, the digital IDs and stuff that they're pushing on people to keep them from being able to function in society. It's very, very important, and I wanted to make sure you knew about it today, because it's something that we certainly need to watch in the end time. God bless each and every one of you.